Now let's get rid of this user argument for all of the hooks in the list items utility. So for all of these, we're going to need to import React from React to use context, and then we'll import auth context from context auth context. And then instead of getting the user as an argument here, we can get the user from React use context auth context. And now we no longer need to accept that argument. And then down here, we don't need to pass that argument along. And then let's go ahead and grab that as a copy in my clipboard, paste it right here. We no longer need to accept that here. We can get rid of that as well. And for create also. And now we just need to go update everywhere else that's using these hooks. So we no longer need to pass the user right there. And let's double check we're not using the user anywhere else, so we can get rid of that prop. And then in the status buttons, we're passing the user right there, no longer need to do that. And all of these also no longer need the user. Let's make sure we don't have any other user. Yep, user is no longer used here, so we can get rid of that one. And then here in the notes text area, we can get rid of the user argument there. And let's make sure, yeah, we're using the user in the book screen, but we can get rid of that one as well. And now let's see, we've got the user being passed to the status buttons. We just got rid of that prompt, so let's ditch that. And we also have the user being used in the rating, and we fixed that one already, so we can get rid of that as well. And then we're passing user to the notes text area. We don't need to do that anymore because that doesn't need it anymore either. So now we just have two uses of user just in the prompts position. So both of those can be totally removed. And then finally over here, we can get rid of the user in this use list items, which means we no longer need that user here, and we can get rid of it in the book row as well. And finally, let's dive into the book row. And here it's using the user, and that's just forwarding it along to rating. So let's get rid of the rating user prop because that doesn't need it anymore. And it was also forwarding it along to the status buttons. We don't need that anymore either. Great, look at all this prop drilling just magically disappearing from before our eyes. It's awesome. We no longer need to worry about sending this user all over our application. So now we can actually go to the authenticated app right here and dive into that implementation. And let's find all the user stuff right here. So users coming from props and logout is coming from props, but let's go ahead and paste this in here. We'll pull logout out of there. And we're going to need React and the auth context, so let's bring that in right here. And we'll import auth context from context auth context. And that's going to get us our logout. We no longer need that prop. And while I'm thinking about it, let's get rid of that prop spread right here. We do in fact need the user right here though, so let's also destructure user from there. And let's find other places where it's being used that it doesn't need to be used. We're forwarding it along to the app routes, so let's take a look at the app routes. So the reading list screen no longer needs it, we just removed that already. The finish screen doesn't need that. That also is using this list item list component that we took care of. The discover book screen is actually a little unique in that we still need the user for this refetch book search query, but what I'm going to do is we'll just paste this auth context thing right here, and we'll import auth context from context auth context. And that way we don't need it right there anymore. We can save that, come back over here and get rid of user there, and we'll get rid of user on the book screen as well. So we're just getting rid of user prop drilling everywhere and instead pulling it from context. So let's find other places where we're using user that we don't need it. Yep, no longer need it in app routes. And now let's cross our fingers and hope that everything worked. Great, so far things are looking pretty good. Let's add that to my reading list. Let's see if I can add some sweet book notes here. That's looking good. We can mark it as read. We can give it a rating. Things are looking awesome. So this was a successful refactor. Let's go ahead and review what we've done here. So we removed the props from the authenticated app as well as the unauthenticated app, and instead passed that value into the value position for our auth context provider. And then we updated all of our hooks that are making authenticated requests to pull the value that they need from context. And this allowed us to really clean up everywhere that's using those hooks to not only not need to accept those props or forward them along, but also not need to pass that as an argument to these hooks. And we were able to do that for all of the list item hooks, all over our code base. So we no longer need to pass that user around all over the place.